Hi folks. So I got out of the shower a few minutes ago, which is why my hair looks the way it does. It's kind of wet and sticking to my head. But this is the time I have to do this video, and I'd like to do it and get it out of the way. That makes it sound like it needs to be done. This is a follow-up on the past 3 or 4 videos that I've been doing based on the energies that have been building up in the signs of Cancer and Capricorn. And we also had a full moon in Sagittarius yesterday, about 36 hours ago, at the most, less than that. But let's just call this the full moon in Sagittarius part 2 video, really, because it's building on some of these themes that I've been developing. What is going on today and tomorrow? As I have described to you, and as I've mentioned to you before, the eclipse polarity, the eclipses are occurring in the signs of Cancer and Capricorn. The eclipses where we're meant to walk through or deal with something in such a way that we have to contend with it or take it up, or where our growth lies, is in the sign of Cancer, and the eclipse where we have to release something, paradoxically by working really hard on it, is in the sign of Capricorn. And the way the planets are aligned right now is that we have the North Node, the eclipse of leaning into point, and Mars and Mercury in Cancer, and in Capricorn, we've got Saturn and the South Node, the release point for the eclipses, and Pluto. Saturn and Pluto and the South Node have been traveling together for much of the first 6 months of this year anyway, and that is where we had the solar eclipse on January the 5th, and we have the corresponding lunar eclipse on July the 16th. So Jan the 5th of this year to July the 16th is one arc. And whatever started on January the 5th is reaching some sort of culmination by the time we get to July the 16th. And this is where Saturn and Pluto are. It is in the sign of Capricorn. If you know your chart, you'll see where this sits. And whatever it is that needs to be released, this mysterious idea of releasing something that we're attached to that has served its purpose, that needs to be let go of, sits in this part of the chart. As I've mentioned, when it comes to releasing, it's not as simple as a relationship or something physical that needs to be released. It could be our attachment to something. It could be our attachment to how people should be or situations should be. And with Saturn and Pluto here, this is the heavier and more loaded part of the chart right now. Saturn is in the sign of Capricorn, which it loves, and it is asking us to diligently look at our sense of self-care, our boundaries, whatever it is that is holding us back from really reaching our fullest potential with regard to the gifts that we've been given and what it is that we're here to do. And in tandem with that, release whatever it is that needs to be released that is keeping us from being at our best. At the same time, Saturn is the planet of karma and cause and effect. And so, as I've said, it is not a planet that rewards rash or reactive or any action that is done that is suspect in terms of its intention. And as I've mentioned to you before, the one thing I can say about human beings is that we can justify anything. We will justify anything. So you have to be really conscious of intention when it comes to the actions that we are taking. Sometimes we feel that doing something that is manipulative or backhanded or reactive, or trying to get a rise out of someone, or trying to rope someone in, or backstabbing someone, or we can find ways of justifying that. But Saturn, in the long run, and maybe not even so much in the long run, in the medium run, will hand you your butt on a plate. At the same time, sometimes we have to take actions that protect our boundaries. When it comes to self-love, Saturn encourages that, but you have to be very, very mindful and conscious of what you're doing and why it is that you are doing it and what is driving the actions in question. So we have Saturn and South Node and Pluto on the Capricorn axis, and we have the lunar eclipse here on July the 16th, as we've mentioned. That said, the sign of Cancer, where the eclipses of leaning into are concerned, was active July the 16th of last year to September the 16th of last year, and will become active. The next new moon solar eclipse is on July the 2nd. It's the next lunation. It's the next new moon solar eclipse. I know a lot of this stuff is being repeated, but I really believe in repeating the information. It comes in layers, and it just bears thinking about. The sign of Cancer has been pretty inactive for the first half of this year. our preoccupation has been around what it is that needs to be released, and what does that mean, and where do we have to work hard and diligently. And when it comes to Saturn being the planet of self-love and intention, and us really thinking about what is going to help us meet our potential in the biggest and best way, often Saturn's influence is not felt in the most genial of manners. It's the nose to the grindstone planet. It makes us work hard. Whatever it is that we have to contend with, wherever it is that we have to set up boundaries, whatever it is that we need to do in order to free ourselves to meet our best potential, using our karmic compass as best we can, while releasing whatever needs to be released, takes hard work. Saturn is not always a pleasant planet. It is a planet that can bring opportunities, and by the time Saturn is done with this sign, as it will be next year in 2020, it can really, if you do the hard work, much like a great teacher, much like the piano teacher that insists you practice your scales 4 hours a day. I don't know what's the right amount of practice. Maybe it's not the right amount of practice. Maybe it's the right kind of practice. And credit goes to whoever it is who said that. I think it was, I don't know if it's Itzhak Perlman or wherever it is that quote comes from. It doesn't matter how many hours you practice, it matters how you practice. So practicing the wrong way for 8 hours is not going to help you as much as practicing the right way for 90 minutes might. So what is the right practice? And this idea of practice, and this idea of this wise but sound and solid martial arts teacher that's going to make you, by the time Saturn is done, these eclipses are done, it can really lay a very solid and reliable foundation that will last a reward. A lot of astrologers and a lot of people who know astrology look for the reward in Saturn, look for the nose to the grindstone quality, look for the roll up my sleeves and contend with this quality, because by the time Saturn is done, there is the idea of a reward being given. And by the time we get to next year, 2020, Jupiter, the planet of blessings and luck and new beginnings, is going to be in this part of the chart as well. So do the hard work. Try to remain in inner conversation with regard to what is the best way to approach whatever it is that needs to be released. Identify whatever it is that needs to be released and do the hard work, the serious work. We've talked about words like responsibility and seriousness. I'm also going to say there was a word that I came across today that really was so bang on, and I wanted to share with you, and it's sensible. With Saturn, it's a question of being sensible. You could say being wise. You could say, because of Jupiter's positive influence at the time of this full moon, you could say being wise, being full of faith. You could say being loving, but I would say being sensible. So be sensible as you are navigating these waters, and even as you navigate whatever it is that needs to be done over the next 6 months, after July the 2nd, the solar eclipse in Cancer, January the 10th, 2020, lunar eclipse in Cancer. Okay. So, planets in Capricorn, Saturn, Pluto, South Node. We've covered that. Since the middle of May, we've had Mars in Cancer. Finally, a planet comes into Cancer. Ta-da-da-da. Mars, the planet of action, drive, passion, one of the planets of sexuality. I would argue a planet of sexuality, stronger perhaps in some ways than Venus in that regard. The planet of going after what you want, the planet of fighting and conflict and war, and indeed, anyway, we get the sense. Mars, the red planet, sees red, is in a sign, as I've said, that it is not entirely comfortable with, in the sign of Cancer, which is much more emotionally driven and much more preoccupied with emotional logic, emotional satisfaction, and nurture. As I've already warned you, it is not sensible to look to engage in conflict that is crabby and sideways and passive-aggressive and backhanded in some way. So that's one of the challenges, is that because Mars is not able to really express itself very clearly or very directly, my last video for the full moon said something to the effect of dealing with the consequences of frustrated passion. Passion does not only have to be romantic or sexual passion. Passion or drive could be related to career, related to work, related to any activities and actions you need to take, related to arguments, related to protecting yourself, relating to whatever it is that you feel driven to do. It is somewhat thwarted and cannot express itself directly. This will change by the end of this month when Mars enters Leo. That will be a pleasanter energy for Mars to deal with. On June the 4th, the day after the new moon in Gemini on June the 3rd, Mercury entered the sign of Cancer. So right now, as I said, we have 2 planets in Cancer, Mars and Mercury, and 2 planets in Capricorn, Saturn and Pluto. This is the standoff that was very active last week and is still continuing. This is the standoff that has been creating, on the positive side, the prospect of the potential for opportunity, depending on where the eclipses are taking place. And this is the standoff that is also creating tension, stress, an announcement or a portent of where it is that there will be struggle or war or challenge for those people for whom the eclipses are expressing themselves in a more challenging manner. How do we deal with this particular energy? I would still come back to the word sensible, sensibly. The other thing I'm going to tell you is that the time to walk through the portal and deal with whatever it is coming up, you may be dealing with things and may continue to deal with them in the best way you know how currently, but it will really show up after July the 2nd. July the 2nd is when the gates open. July 2nd to 16th is going to be a charged time. Mercury goes retrograde on July the 7th when the solar eclipse happens, announcing or finally opening the gates for whatever it is that we need to contend with and where we need to go through and where our progress lies and where our fulfillment lies and where our evolution lies, that eclipse, the eclipse of leaning into. And then on the 16th is the eclipse of whatever we need to chuck and where we're doing the hard work to be able to release that. So it's going to be July and August are going to be a time when we really need to be paying attention. So if with frustrated Mars we're feeling like we can't really get through and get done with stuff and we're only making limited progress, that's fine. Be aware that progress needs to be made after July the 2nd. Someone left a comment on my video and used the word perseverance. I actually think that perseverance is going to kick in more after July the 2nd. Right now may be a time of sensible watching and trying to understand where the pressures really sit. Especially this week, you may still have the energy to take some action, but next week, as you head towards that, as you head towards the July the 4th weekend, as you head towards July the 2nd, you're wrapping up this particular lunar cycle. So as much as, again, you'll want to take energy, as you're heading towards July the 2nd, those last week and the last 2 or 3 days before July the 2nd, it's going to be hard. You're just going to feel depleted to take that action. What is going on today and tomorrow that really, 12 minutes into this video, that really is making me re-emphasize all this? Over the past week, Mars and Mercury and Saturn and Pluto and the eclipse point were directly opposite each other. And June the 4th, right after June the 4th, when Mercury entered Cancer, Mars was already here, is when you may have had some sort of communication or communications, either around, on the positive side, something that was opening things up for you, or something positive, or opportunities, or communications around what it is, where it is that the challenge lies, where you're going to have to pick up the sword and deal with whatever you're going to deal with, whether it's an internal challenge or an external challenge. The communications likely could be, again, email, verbal, conversations, messages coming to you. Sometimes it's intuitive messages. A lot of communication around this place where this polarity sits. As I've already mentioned, not wise to engage in messing with people. The wiser or the more sensible approach is, and if someone is messing with you, the wiser or more sensible approach right now is to take a step back. Or you're thinking about messing with someone, whoever it is that's messing with you, it might actually be kind of a male energy. It doesn't have to be a male who's messing with you, but it could be a male energy, even in a female. So if you're a woman and you're thinking about doing something that's archetypally male, rash, quick, unwise, reactive, sorry guys, driven, it may be wiser to remove yourself and lean into the more feminine, wise, sensible part of the archetype that is less conflict-driven and more removed and wiser, and really tries to think about how to build the bridges and be patient and connect people as opposed to drive wedges between them. So just tap, another archetype that I will leave with you. For people who are dealing with this in a more positive manner, it's simply that whatever it was that was making its way to you hasn't come yet. Watch for the time after July the 2nd to see whatever it is that emerges or comes, and see if it reaches some sort of fruition in July and August. On the more challenging side, as I said, this opposition has created the throwdown, has given you a sense of what the battlefield is going to look like. It's created the fanfare. We're not going to start engaging probably till after July the 2nd. That doesn't mean that there won't be things that happen this week and next week. It just means that that's when we'll really need the perseverance to contend with what we need to contend with. And July 2nd, September 2nd, November the 10th, and January the 10th. The first 3 dates in 2019, January the 10th, 2020, will be key dates in contending with where it is that we're supposed to walk through. I keep repeating this information for a reason. Today, in the sign of Cancer, Mars and Mercury, Saturn and Pluto are here, are moving past the opposition, but Mercury and Mars are coming together. So it could be that today or tomorrow, or leaning into today or tomorrow, there is a conjunction, literally, between the planet of passion and the planet of communication. Now, it could be that over the last 4 or 5 days, this frustrated passion meets communication, and not very satisfying communications continue to provide you with information and messages with regard to where this throwdown is, or where this challenge is, or where the opportunities are. Could be the way things develop. It could be that something is also done in writing or in communication or contractually, or is attempted to be done in such a way, combining kind of twisted passion and drive along with communication, someone getting a rise out of you, someone trying to hurt you, you trying to hurt someone in some sort of way over the next 48 hours or so. The other thing is that these planets, they'll conjunct today, and tomorrow they oppose Pluto. So they've opposed Saturn, they've opposed the eclipse point, and tomorrow is when the last of these oppositions occur. So I would continue to watch for today and tomorrow and see if there's something that emerges. Whatever it was that this skirmish was laying down, wherever this throwdown is, wherever this challenge is, wherever this announcement is, wherever this premonition is, whatever this portent is around what it is that you're going to be contending with, wherever the stage is being set. The stage isn't completely set till tomorrow or day after, Wednesday of this week. Wednesday, Thursday, depending on your time zone. So watch for more that might develop in such a way that someone just comes in and drops a cherry on the cake. I hope they do it sensibly and wisely and with the best of intentions. If they don't, they will be dealing with consequences, because whoever it is that they're contending with may choose to take the more sensible approach. And sensible does not... you can still be sensible in a loving way, but it's just less reactive, it's more calculated, it's clearer. It's clearer. It is this idea of if you're taking a sword or a knife against someone, you may not be aware of it, but you're really taking a sword or knife against yourself. Another way that I like to express it is every victory is a hollow victory, because it is a victory against another human being, and every human being has some sort of form of divinity within them. So when you are fighting someone, particularly fighting someone in a non-clean manner, when there are cleaner options available, beware. This is at the heart of karma. You're taking an action against divinity, and as a result of which the action will seek to balance itself. So whether you're feeling attacked, whether you're contemplating some sort of attack, whether you're in the middle of some sort of power struggle, whether people are throwing lines at you and you're throwing lines at them, try to get to a place of sensible and sense and sensibility. Sensibility, not necessarily sense, not necessarily sensitivity. And we'll just wait till July the 2nd, if you can, to contend with what you need to contend with in the second half of this year. Some actions need to be taken this week and next week, they do. So the reason why I'm harping on this again and again was because after I harp on things in videos, epiphanies and messages and clues from other things I read, from other videos I watch, from other things I do come up. And I really wanted to convey this word sensible to you. I really wanted to lay down once again and finally, for one final time, the showdown between planets that has made the time since June the 4th so interesting and exciting and full of potential for some people and challenging for others in a way that is intuitively a call to our intuitively we know that there's something bigger that needs to be contended with that in July and August may change our lives. Remember that the eclipses this year repeat next year. So we're really only in the middle of this change. The conclusions may very well come next year in 2020. And I also was really compelled to do this because the last of these opposition transits, Mars and Mercury coming together, Mercury typically, travels faster than Mars, but it's starting to slow down. So Mercury's going to cross Mars, and Mars and Mercury are going to be pretty together for a while, and then Mercury's going to go retrograde on July the 7th and cross Mars again. So, I'm going to develop this more in my next video when I introduce whatever it is that's going to be going on in the sign of Leo. That's also going to be in conversation with these eclipses. It'll be fascinating. July and August will be fascinating months to watch. So the Mars-Mercury conjunction and the fact that tomorrow both these planets oppose Pluto, the planet of death and transformation, sort of the most intense of planets, the planets against which we have no power. And as I've said to you, when I say death and transformation, you don't have to take care of the death and transformation. Pluto will take care of it for you and has already been taking care of it for you for a while. It's a slow-moving planet that will completely transform the part of the chart that it is in for a pretty lengthy period of time. That is the end of this showdown between Mars and Mercury and Saturn and Pluto, with Saturn and Pluto being the stronger ones, but Mars and Mercury coming in and saying, hey, don't forget, Capricorn, it's Cancer where you have to lean into, and Cancer where your evolution lies, and it's the sign of Cancer where the new moon solar eclipse is going to occur on July the 2nd, related to the July the 12th eclipse of last year and the September 12th date of last year. The Sun enters the sign of Cancer again to continue to develop this part of the chart on the 21st, and then till the 2nd, it subconsciously lays the groundwork for the solar eclipse on July the 2nd. This is where I'm going to leave this, and we're not going to go over this showdown again. I feel good about finally concluding really the last 3 videos that I've done with this one, summarizing everything, giving you a couple more thoughts to try and determine how you're going to play with the energies of this week and next week. If you find this video useful, other videos useful, you're welcome to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, comment on it, share it. And if you're interested in consulting with me for a reading, or you want me to send you an easy-to-read version of your birth chart or something along those lines, you have a question, my email address is going to be in the description section of this video on YouTube and on Facebook where I post it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be back soon with another video. Thanks.